All right, everybody. Good afternoon. I think it's time we had this discussion, and I think it's time that I said something a little more definitive about the topic. It's an uncomfortable one for some people. I think at this point it's not uncomfortable for that many people, though. I think a lot of people are pretty over it, they're pretty at peace with it, and I've kind of gotten there as well. But I know it's definitely an uncomfortable topic for this team because this is one of the biggest mess ups that this team has ever participated in. This is one of the bigger mess ups in the NFL of the last decade plus. This is one of the biggest mistakes that you will see a team make, but you can either accept the fact that you made the mistake or you can keep making the mistake worse by trying to live in denial of it. So I'm talking about Jamal Adams. Obviously, you can see the tweet from a Dove on us on screen here. And yeah, at this point, I think that we as Seahawks fans need to have a little bit of a discussion here. For us, I don't think it's much of a discussion. Like straight up, Jamal Adams is so reviled in this fan base right now that I would be very surprised if I got a single comment on this video that unironically and in good faith tried to stand up for Adams right now. Except maybe in the sense that some people feel bad for him, right? Like some people just look at it and go, well, it's not totally his fault. And it's not. But I don't think anybody's going to stand up for him in the sense of, oh, he's still the guy. He's still part of an elite Seahawks defense. He can still be this. He can still be that. But this is a very important week for this team, I feel like, in terms of acknowledging reality. Jamal Adams, there are now reports coming out that he was healthy for the Monday night game against the Eagles, and the Seahawks deactivated him not because of any injury that prevented him from playing, but because we just felt like it was in our best interest to deactivate him. A healthy scratch. And as we all know, he was not at the game. He chose to stay home instead of attending the game. He was not on the sideline or in the locker room or anything. Now, that I'm not that, like, individually, I wouldn't be bothered by that all that much, but it's definitely heaping a little bit more onto the pile here. And when you combine that with the play of Julian Love on Monday night, I think that pretty much all of us would be on board with Jamal Adams being minimized as much as possible on the 2023 Seahawks. So, what I mean by that is we play the Titans this upcoming week, and I'm going to be very interested to see what happens at safety for that game. Is Jamal Adams going to get his starting job back, or is Julian Love going to ride with it until such a time as he proves that he's not any better or even worse, or he starts to make the same mistakes, or he starts to make some of the mistakes he's made this year? What are we going to do there? Who's it going to be? And at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This is a difficult, but nonetheless pretty clear decision at this point. It is. It's not it's difficult in the sense that you are admitting that you are wrong. You are admitting that you messed up. You are admitting you made one of the most colossal mess ups of, like I said, the last decade in the NFL. You traded two first round picks, a third round pick, and Bradley McDougald 4 years ago to get this guy. And now here you are, having gotten very little from him over the years, and he doesn't really look playable at the moment. And this is coming from me. You guys know I am not a Jamal Adams hater. I didn't love the trade when we made it, but I was intrigued by it. I was definitely like, I think this is a very good player, a very special player, one of the best players in the entire NFL at the time we made the trade. So I was definitely intrigued by it. That first year he was here, I defended him. I defended him the next year as well. I said he's not being utilized properly. This is not a Jamal Adams problem. This is a Pete Carroll and Ken Norton Jr. problem. We need to use Jamal Adams in his strengths, not his weaknesses. And I defended him when he got hurt a couple times. It's not his fault he got hurt. It's nobody's fault he really got hurt. And even earlier this year, I was kind of defending him. Not really, but I said he was playing okay. A lot of people thought he was the worst player in the world, and I said, no, there's some good stuff here. His coverage metrics were legitimately very good. And where we sit right now, even after the last two games that he's played where his coverage was bad, he's still really not letting up that much on the back end overall. But you put all these things together, and we are now at a point where even I have to concede you just gotta accept that he's not a part of this team at their best. You need to accept that while there might be something there in the future, it's at least possible that he's still recovering from the devastating injury last year. Right now, his play is spiraling. He, as a person, seems to be spiraling a bit, and he needs to not be starting on this defense anymore. Now, if you want to put him on the field occasionally in sub packages, you want to put him on the field occasionally as like a blitzer, maybe a situational linebacker, that's another thing. If you want him to be a backup and come in when players get hurt or if somebody is performing really poorly, that's different. But this weekend and the process that the team goes through this week, because Carroll's already said he's pretty optimistic that Jamal Adams will be physically capable of playing this week. Now, that assumes that he was ever physically unable to play in the first place, which some people, I mean, this report is really just kind of feeding fuel into a theory that many people already had, that he was a healthy scratch in the first place. So realistically, those people now feel very. If you thought that he was a healthy scratch before, you're certainly going to think it now. But if this was just like a 1 week suspension of sorts, where Adams was held out just as kind of like a secret suspension, and then Julian Love goes and does what he does, where he plays his best game of the season by far, and things seem to fall into place a little bit better on defense with Jamal Adams not playing. Like, this is a difficult, but nonetheless, I feel pretty obvious decision. You got to go with it. You got to go with Julian Love. And it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. It doesn't have to be something that you stick with no matter what. If Julian Love goes back to the way he was playing earlier this year, where he had a couple games where he was giving up 100 plus yards in coverage as a safety, and where he's been targeted a ridiculous number of times in coverage, then yeah, maybe you can reconsider then. But I want to see this team accept that this is not working right now. I want to see this team accept that, look, the trade was really, really bad. It was one of the worst trades this team has ever made. Probably the worst trade this team has ever made. It happens. It's not all Pete Carroll's fault. It's not all John Schneider's fault. It's not all Jamal Adams' fault. It's not any one person's fault. There were so many angles involved in this. A lot of it is just bad luck. If Jamal Adams doesn't suffer those severe, crippling injuries over the last couple years, we're probably not having this conversation. We're probably sitting here saying, man, that Jamal Adams guy is really, really good at football. It was not a great trade, but at least we got a great player out of it. So it's not Pete Carroll's fault that Jamal Adams, who had always been a healthy player, missed very little time in his career, suddenly turned injury prone and started getting hurt a lot and had devastating injuries on top of that. But if you continue to stick with something that clearly isn't working that well, that is your fault. And this is a prime opportunity. After the game that Julian Love had, it's not even going to be hard. If Julian Love had played bad on Monday night, then yeah, you probably go back to Jamal Adams, and I might have defended that decision somewhat because I do think Adams has been good in coverage until the most recent two games. But you combine that with the fact that he can't tackle, you combine that with the fact that he's not really having an impact as a pass rusher, you combine that with the fact that he's not really behaving all that well off the field. You combine that with the implication that he's a little bit of a cancer on this team right now with how much better the team looked without him. You put all these things together in a blender, and I really want to see this team just accept that they missed, accept that it didn't work out. And again, it's not like it's completely one person's fault. It's not like all the stuff that failed here is on Pete. And obviously, that doesn't mean that he's exempt from this, but it's not going to make it any better to keep throwing him out there and you keep trying to use him in a way that doesn't suit his skill set and him not even being able to deliver on the things that he used to be able to deliver on, like, say, tackling and getting after the quarterback. Like, honestly, at this point, I don't even know why Pete Carroll loves Jamal Adams so much. I know he does. I know he has a deep, deep, deep love for Jamal Adams in his game, but then you don't use him the way he's meant to be used. You play him 30 yards downfield, you play him in zone coverage, you don't let him blitz very much at all. His blitz rate is extremely low. Like, I guess he likes everything about Jamal Adams except how he plays, because when he uses him, he doesn't really use him in the Jamal Adams kind of way. But regardless, the point I'm trying to get to here is this is a very important moment, I think, for this team. Julian Love played so incredibly well on Monday night, and Jamal Adams has been such a problem over the last, I'd say, 3 weeks now. I think you're just obligated to ride with it for now. And again, if Love had not played that good, I might not be saying this. If Adams hadn't had those two bad moments in coverage, or it was more than two really, but bad cover plays over the last 2 weeks, I wouldn't be saying this. And if this wasn't just kind of a culmination of 4 years of not being able to get the best out of Adams, of course, I wouldn't be saying these things. But I want to see this team just accept reality and make a difficult, but once again, I'm going to say the word again, pretty obvious decision. And then when the offseason comes around, there's another obvious decision that needs to be made, but we'll get to that in the offseason. So see you guys later. Go Hawks, and I hope this team makes the right decision.